Welcome to the Theory of DFS podcast. I'm Jordan Cooper, the co-author of The Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports. It's a 15-hour audio DFS masterclass at theoryofdfs.com. Join with me as mostly Erik Beimfohr of spikeweek.com. And if I had a gavel, Erik, I'd call this meeting to order of the Hollywood Brown support group.
Oh boy, I wasn't sure if I was going to make it to today after not one, not two, but three wide open touchdown drops on my most important player of the slate, basically. It was all in Ravens-Lions game, which went fine. But holy cow, I jumped up on the second one. I jumped up in celebration, scared the shit out of my dogs, knocked my drink over, created anarchy around my entire house because I was so excited for that second bomb. And of course he drops it. And then it was 2 minutes later, he drops the third one, which was also wide open. And so I just feel blessed after all of that to have not had a losing Sunday. I lost the first 2 weeks, and so I made a little money, nothing crazy, but I profited yesterday despite the stress that Hollywood Brown cost me.
Right. The only reason I had a loss yesterday is DK main slate cash. I did fine on FanDuel. I did fine on early slate. I did fine on tiers. But I had to make the 4v4 swap. I had the perfect swap. I had 4 slots left. I had Madison, I had Kupp, I had Godwin, I had Woods. So Woods was that you didn't have to play him. Because all the cash lineups that I was looking at on DraftKings were projected very close to each other, depending on if you were playing Tyler Boyd, you were playing Marvin Jones, were you playing Clyde Edwards-Helaire, were you playing Mike Davis, which I did. Which I did. I mean, he got 11 points, but whether you're playing Saquon, whether you're playing Mixon, you're probably playing Madison regardless. So the combination I had early, whether you're playing Titans or the Bengals defense. So I had, and then Hawkinson versus Higbee or something at tight end. So I had Hawkinson and I had the Titans, and I had Mike Davis and no Saquon Barkley. So I know that I'm behind. I need Robert Woods to put up 28 points in order to beat out all the other teams that have the same guys as me. And I'm not going to rely on that. So I had the perfect swap in place of all the negative correlation of everything that is. So instead of playing Alexander Madison, so instead of playing Cooper Kupp, I play Justin Jefferson. Instead of Godwin, I play Adam Thielen. Because I'm not going to be playing Alexander Madison. So I want to play the negatively correlated players to them. And since I'm not playing Godwin, and I need a running back slot, I'm playing Lenny Fournette in that spot. And I'm keeping Robert Woods because Robert Woods is negatively correlated to Kupp. Now, the swap didn't get there, obviously, but the lineup, if I left alone, didn't get there either. So it's one of those things where I wasn't going to get there no matter what. The lineup, if I stood pat, would have still been 18 points below the cash line. So being 18 points below the cash line or 34 points below the cash line what does it matter? It's the same. It doesn't matter to me. So I was dead there to begin with, but everything else, I had those guys on FanDuel, so it's I have Kupp on FanDuel, I have Kupp, Metcalf, I got Woods, I got Madison, so I had the Broncos defense, and that worked out, and so so I pretty much doubled my money on FanDuel, doubled my money on the early only slate, doubled my money in tiers, and just my main slate cash, even my GPPs on DraftKings was only a minus 6% loss. So it was minus 17% on the day, which is dude, I have minus 17% on an MLB slate in GP. I mean, that's just a survive and advance type of thing. But of course I play a lot more volume in NFL. So the raw money is $2,000 or something. But I mean, whatever it is. But I was always stuck with I had lineups where it's 188, 192, and it has Lenny Fournette in it, or it has T.J. Hawkinson in it as a one-off, or Marquise Brown. To me, Marquise Brown, the weird thing about this slate was, I don't want to call it weird, is that Cooper Kupp was the obvious. Like I projected Cooper Kupp to be 26% owned in the large field, and there's like the slant. He ended up coming in at 33, but even at 26% owned, I was still getting like 16 to 20% of like he in my aggregate. He was the second highest raw projected receiver on the entire slate. Tyreek Hill was like 1 point higher than him, but Tyreek Hill was also $1,400 more.
Yep.
So even in my I did a 20 set for my single entry 3 max. Like he was still in like 12 out of 20 because like I don't have to give up that much projection in those contests, and a $6,800 receiver with that high a projection just like he just ends up in like anything I did to try to get him out just dropped his projection too much. Where I'm already playing Najee Harris at lower ownership in that lineup. I'm already playing Marquise Brown at 6%, 7% ownership in that lineup. So like it was a weird slate where the highest owned guy, like, yes, I got in my slant build for 150. He was in like a little over 16% of my lineups. Obviously, I swapped a bunch, right? I mean, we saw that in the game changer. I believe. Do you believe like did you play the game changer? I'm playing the spy and the double spy and the power sweeps and all those. DK Metcalf came in at 26.89% owned. Do you think that before, like Justin Jefferson was 17% owned? Now, that game was one of my top targets. The top targets that I had was Lamar, Brown, Andrews, Swift. Like some type of
that was all
like
my
that.
teams.
Right?
That was all my teams.
Okay. Well, I would
great minds think alike. I single stacked Lamar, but you get it.
Right,
one
you
of
get it. Right, one or the other. Because you also could do Lamar plus Brown plus Hawkinson or something instead of Swift. Then I also had Cousins plus Jefferson plus Conklin or something like that. Yep. Right? Because I don't like playing the two. In the game changer, you can play Thielen and Jefferson together, but not in in a 5,000 person contest. I'm more likely to get the cheap Osborne. But he was higher owned than he should be. And then run it back with Metcalf or Lockett, or something like that. Then my third one was Josh Allen. So Allen plus Diggs plus one of Beasley or Sanders, and then either Gibson or Gibson, McLaurin, or Logan Thomas. I filled some of them with. And then the was the fourth one that I was playing. Those are the main. I mean, I was basically in single entry 3 max. I played no Bucks Rams stacks, but I still had plenty of Kupp Godwin. Something because they're just projected too high.
I ended with Kupp Evans on a team. Same idea. Because I was playing Lamar, Hollywood, Swift. I think I had it was like super low, like I didn't care. I was just
right. It was super low. Like once you put Brown in there, like and you're pairing him with Lamar and you put in Swift, and Swift is like 11. Like what was he in the slants? I had him at like 11, and he came in. Yeah, he came in at 11%. He came in 11.35% in the slant. 13% in the game changer, 8% in the spy. So like once you do that, it's like I feel no need to like why aren't I playing the highest projected receiver at 6,800 in that? Like that was the main reason is that my stacks were different enough without being. I mean, we're not talking about like we're talking about Josh Allen, right? We're talking about we're talking about Lamar Jackson, who was already projected to be one of the higher owned quarterbacks, right? I'm like Kirk Cousins plus Jefferson plus Conklin. Like, why aren't they playing Cooper Kupp in that lineup? Like, why do I need? Like, I'm already getting leverage off of Madison ownership as it is by playing that. So, like, it just ends up that way. To me, the biggest decisions on this slate that mattered, while it's one of those weird things. It's very similar to defense, but not. I mean, I'm exaggerating too much. Did you find that at running back in like the mid range? You could have played 12 guys, and it's just a matter of getting the two right ones. Like there was no standout running backs. Although, was it just me? I mean, maybe this is heresy. I did not see from any projection set that I could go by why Saquon Barkley at 6,500 was any better than Mixon or Harris or Matt. I mean, Madison did project better than Barkley. Once Cook is ruled out. I get that. but I didn't see a need. Like in the slant, Barkley was 18%. The game changer was 31%. Like, I know the narrative is there, but I mean, my issue is that I believe for this. I'm going as someone that doesn't build their own projections, but kind of know how it's done.
Yeah.
The year that Barkley played with Eli Manning is not. I don't think is equatable to Daniel Jones.
Mm-hmm.
But like I'm going to I'm going to the Blitz. I'm going to all the places. Awesemo. I'm going to ETR. Like, people could say, "Oh, he's a top play at $6,500." Now, obviously, on FanDuel, Barkley's 6,000 and Madison's 5,200. Just jam him in. That's
Yes.
that
was
I get.
ridiculous.
But on DraftKings, like he was outside of the top 5 in projection on all the, like, it's weird. It's one of those weird things where if you read content or listen to podcasts, oh, Saquon Barkley is one of the top plays. Then you go to any projection and Mixon out projects him. Like, I mean, like, so I didn't see the need. Like, am I supposed to just go by like content? I'm going to go by numbers, and the numbers don't make sense. It's not like there was one projection that was like outlier or anything. It was just across the board that like my top exposed running back was Najee Harris. Like, I was trying to play him in that range more than anything else. And he was 100 more than Barkley on the guys that he plays 95% of snaps, and the Bengals defense is whatever, and Bengals defense was going to be owned also.
Yep.
And everyone wanted to play him in the first week with this not much of a price rise.
Yep.
And if all those guys were kind of equal, like, I just saw no reason to like, well, why am I playing Eckler when I could play? It seems like I'm giving up at most a point in projection and like dropping my ownership in half at running back. So I played, like, my pool at running back, because I had like 13, 14 running backs that were rotated around. The problem was is that I needed the two in the lineups with Lamar Jackson stacked, but it's like, oh, Andrews did well, but Brown didn't. And then in that lineup, I have Najee Harris and DeAndre Swift. And it's like, I got running back right, but I have 6 points at wide receiver. And a defense that didn't score like 20 points, right? Or 12 plus points. So like, to me, I'm looking at my lineups going, I'm not concerned with how I built. I mean, I was over on Josh Allen. I was over on Lamar. I was over on Kirk Cousins. I was over on Kyler Murray even. I played 10% AJ Green, for crying out loud, okay? Because I figured the projections we were getting on Hopkins didn't know he was injured.
Yeah, agreed.
Like, I think that's one of those things where it's very hard. It's a very fragile projection on all the Cardinals when we kind of know that Hopkins is playing through an injury, that he's going to play through an injury. So, like, I didn't play much Hopkins, yet some, because he was just so low owned. But I figured that who's the most likely to play a Hopkins-like role of a mid to short A dot that's outside? To me, that's AJ Green, right? Kirk and Moore are going to be in the slot, so like, who's going to be doing those types of things? So like, give me AJ Green at 4,500 to pair up with Kyler Murray, and then you play Marvin Jones. I played some LaVisca on the way back. I mean, I didn't play a lot of those types of lineups. But do you believe? Okay, the original point was DK Metcalf in the game changer, 26%, Jefferson at 17%. Do you believe a lot of that ownership, maybe not all of it, obviously, that's where Cooper Kupp and Godwin were? I mean, like, because obviously if you were going to late swap with 4 late games, you weren't going to Jets Broncos.
No.
You probably weren't going to Raiders Dolphins. The other most obvious game, if you're going to pivot off of Rams Bucks, is Seahawks Vikings. Now in the lower stakes, that doesn't happen. In the Millie, Metcalf was 13%, Jefferson was 6%. But you have to believe that 17% ownership on Jefferson and 26% on Metcalf were in the game changer. I mean, a good portion of that is late swap, right?
I thought so, and that was my biggest struggle with this slate. The running back thing, definitely, that you outlined. I mean, flip a coin. DeAndre Swift was my favorite, but that had mostly to do with the game that I thought was the best one to target. Not even that much about DeAndre Swift, but the afternoon stuff. So like on my main team, I didn't play a single player from the afternoon. On my other team, I did. Like I said, I had Cup and some guys from the afternoon, but I struggled the most with that point that you just outlined, where it was, okay, even if I get to the afternoon, I have this information about where I'm standing, right? What options do I even have to swap that like really give me leverage, but also give me the projection that I need, right? And so like I was having conversations with people. I talked to Gretch about it on Sunday morning a little bit. Like, okay, we get to the afternoon, we know that the Cup and Goblin are the most popular. Depending upon what field you're in, are people like everyone knows that if they're chasing, and like that's the difficult theoretical part, like how many people are actually swapping to Metcalf and Jefferson and stuff. But basically my premise was like it's going to be enough. Not only are people playing the Seattle Vikings game like enough to where like everybody, I saw it too. You like that was one of your favorite games.
They were already being played
games.
reasonably enough as it was, but it was
and
the most obvious thing. If you had a snowflake in your lineup early, that's the game you're going to because you're getting off the Rams-Bucks game.
Right, you're not swapping to Cortland Sutton and Elijah Moore. That's different price tiers. I looked a little bit at some kind of keeping tight end in my keeping the afternoon tight end open so that I could go to Waller and something with the Dolphins or stuff. But I just felt like everything I tried to do was it wasn't I wasn't getting anywhere. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't ever able to do any sort of whether it was swap or the original team that I was making. I thought it was a very interesting slate for that kind of like last is so wildly different from week 2. It's like week 2 you have like every game in the afternoon was a swap option. Like you had infinite options. There was ways, even with this kind of like meta gal brain back and forth between your opponents, there was ways that you could go depending upon how your early lineups did. I struggled with that this week. And so I leaned a little bit more heavily to some of these early games because we had all these guys, right? You said the Bills guys, right? I was on Hollywood. I was really on Galladay before the news came out that he was going to be limited snaps. But like there was tons. I thought there was a ton of good. I mean, everybody in that Chiefs Chargers game and on DraftKings they came in at very reasonable ownerships. I thought the Chiefs and Chargers guys did, and so there was just so many options on the early slate, and I didn't feel strong enough. And I'm not even saying I'm right about that, but I didn't feel strong enough about how I could attack those late games, right? Because there was the obvious chalk, and then there was the obvious pivots. And what we saw was the obvious chalk stayed the obvious chalk, but I think it was like actually a little bit closer to like efficient ownership on those guys. But then maybe it was inefficient before, and then people swapped, and it created Jefferson and Metcalf and stuff being a little bit overowned relative to expectations. So I thought it was just kind of a bizarre slate for that. The only thing I'll say about Saquon, and I'm not saying again this is right, wrong, indifferent. I didn't have him originally, and then the Devontae Booker inactive news came out on Sunday morning, and Gretch kind of talked me into it. Maybe I wanted to be talked into it because like on one team I played Kyle Pitts and they were a good pairing. I thought.
I never said he's a bad play. I'm just saying
no.
I don't. He was. Even if you projected him slightly better, like he was within 1 point of any of those other running backs in that range. And like, if you want to make the case that he projected 1 point better and he's that much, okay, fine. I'm not taking that out. But if you take a look at like, let's say the Spy, for instance, Barkley's 26% owned. I'm going to go to the running back ownership.
Yeah.
For something like the Spy. Okay. So not even the game changer. The Spy's at least bigger than the game changer.
Mm-hmm.
So we go to running back. In the Spy, Eckler 28%, Barkley 26%, Madison 18%. Like I'll infinitely play Madison over Barkley. Madison projected better than Barkley for less cost. Derrick Henry 13%, Mike Davis 11%, Tyson Williams 10%, which I'm still trying to figure out why that happened. Tyson Williams was 15% in the $5 big $5 double up on DraftKings.
I did,
and I had a conversation with James on the pregame show. Like, did your projections have a Ravens running back anywhere close to anywhere? He goes, no. It's like I don't get it. He was like the He was like 16th on the list, and like, why is he owned? But
We get
Swift
the
is
rare.
8.
It's the rare example. I do want to talk about the Tyson thing really quick. We see this a handful of times a year or whatever, or like remember again, like James Robinson last year, he would never project it that well, but like he was like the season long kind of guy. So you get in like the millie, and he's always a little bit higher. I personally think Tyson was that this week, where like I was like, in like best ball and season long and all that. I was excited for him. What I mean is a great matchup. He's been kind of a useful player in all of that. So I think people were just excited for him from that perspective, and so you get this random casual bump. But that one was bizarre.
But we have Swift at 8, Carson at 8, Najee Harris at 7, Edmonds at 7, Mixon at 7, Taylor at 5, right? Chubb at 3, Gibson at 2, James Robinson at 1. Like, I mean, yeah, some of these guys project a little bit lower than Barkley, but I mean, if I were to tell you that Barkley only projects 1 point better than Mixon or Harris or Carson, but Barkley's 26% owned, and all those other guys are 7% owned. Like, to me, that's the reason why I still had Barkley in plenty of lineups, but not anywhere near that. I mean, I only had him projected owned at like 19%. And he came in on the slant. He came in at 19. He came in at 18.9. So like, I'm building my large field lineup for the slant. But if that's the case, I just like in the smaller field and like the game changer, Barkley's 31% owned.
Yeah.
And I can't see unless there's some projections out there that I'm not looking at that. I mean, like I'm like what? Like, why should he be 31% owned and the other guys, Najee Harris is 7% owned?
Well, it's definitely some of its name, right? Is like, I do think there's just enough of that where it's like Saquon Barkley, remove projection, remove everything. There's
right. People
enough
go that he should be an $8,500 running back.
Right, exactly. Whether that's right or wrong is not the point, but that's what he used to be, and he was a first round pick in fantasy drafts, and he's Saquon Barkley, right? I mean, and people, you get a quote unquote good matchup, I guess, and so I think he's one of the ones that will naturally get the artificial bump, even when the projection doesn't necessarily align. Even though, like you said, it's not that the projection didn't align, but relative to the running back position is wild right now. I know Dalvin's probably a short-term injury, but there's so many injuries, and then there's like the state of the NFL is bizarre with like the Bears are really bad. So the Bears have a running back who's playing every snap.
Can I ask you about that also? That's another thing that I had on my notes to talk about. These confusing. These are the things that confuse me when obviously I'm a numbers-oriented person on how I build my lineups. Yet I still listen and read everything because that affects ownership, right? So just to be transparent, like player projections, I typically aggregate. Like now I weight the different projection sets differently. So like the blitz is my highest weighted one, right? But it's not like overwhelmingly so. But I get projections from 6 other places. Ownership projections I don't aggregate. Ownership projections, I will look everywhere, and then I will manually make the decisions on my own.
Got it.
I'll look at another. Oh, they have this guy at one place has a Cup at 21, one has him at 34, right? So what am I supposed to take the average? I have to make a choice, and then I'm listening. Then everyone has Gronkowski at 5%, and I go, no, he's 12. Like, it just, these recency bias, it's going to happen. So but if I don't put it in like 12 that I think it's going to be, I start getting more Rob Gronkowski in my Brady stacks because of the owner.
Jesus, he was 15% in the play action.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like some of this you have to just adjust manually.
2% in the luxury box, 15% in the play action. Right. That's funny. Anyway, sorry.
But the question I have for that is Justin Fields. Here. This is what I believe happened. Here, I'm going to make the bull case first, and I'm going to make the bear case, which is which it should be. The bull case, I understand playing Justin Fields at 5,200. It's the same thing as when Jalen Hurts was that price. And it's like, this guy could be a 7K quarterback, I want to get on him immediately.
Yep.
And there's massive upside there. I get it. Herbert was the same thing. When we don't know, right? So I get the case for that at 5,200.
And he runs. I think that was the big thing.
No, of course, it's a rushing quarterback. I mean, yes, that's the main reason. But Justin Fields, Daniel Jones at like a 6-point higher projection for only 600 more. Justin Fields was playing for a team that had the third lowest implied team total on the entire slate, and we know that quarterback scoring is tied primarily to team total and efficiency. Now, obviously, the rushing style quarterbacks get a little bit of a break there because they're able to almost get a touchdown's worth of points just running the ball. But it's a rookie quarterback's first start. If the two problems I had with this was, one, I saw plenty of people playing him in cash, and I don't get no projects. I mean, like, I'm just looking around, like, where other than narrative bias or something, he doesn't project well. I mean, like, if anything, Daniel Jones is being jammed into lineups more than Justin Fields, and then. If you pair Justin Fields, even with one pat, Fields plus Mooney plus OBJ, you do a skinny stack. Or you play Cole Kmet in the double stack. Or you use Allen Robinson instead of Mooney. You're now occupying nearly half of your lineup with a game that has the second lowest total on the entire slate. So, like, I get the Justin Fields, like, the upside case, but then you're going to be playing him naked, if anything. Okay. But then you're also the bear case of, like, dude, James made a good point. Because I just talked about this on the DFS pregame show. Fields was named the starter, and the spread did not change, and the total went down. So if we say that the betting markets are, like, the most efficient, the closing lines in NFL, shouldn't that be a signal that like, if the Bears team total went up 3 points after Fields was named the starter, then okay, man, then obviously his projection would get better. But right. The fact that nothing moved, right? Am I the crazy one, or did you have, like, because people were asking me on Saturday for my stream, Justin Fields. I'm like, I have zero. I mean, I'm playing 150 lineups, and I have none of this. I have none of the game. Like, yeah. I have none of the. I had some OBJ as a one-off, and that's it.
Yeah, I liked Odell.
Right, but outside of that, it's like I have none of this game. And people like,
but Odell's on the Browns side.
Right. Odell's on the favorite side by like 10 plus points.
Yeah.
So I'm not the crazy one then.
No, I think. To be clear, I did play Justin Fields in cash on DraftKings, and it wasn't really because of anything other than it fit how, like, I had it. It was like the exact lineup that I wanted. It was literally every player that I wanted. I got him. Huh?
Who'd you play in that lineup that you needed a $5,200 quarterback? Did you play Derrick Henry?
No.
Saquon,
what
Madison.
What
did you need the salary for?
The Rams wide receivers, Hawkinson, Godwin, and somebody else.
You're naming my lineup, and I had Lamar Jackson in it.
Hold on, I'm trying to pull it up.
Right, that's what I'm trying to figure. Like, what did you need the salary for? Oh. That was my point. Like, he doesn't project well, and I don't need the salary.
I know I ended on Carson because I swapped Carson, so I don't even know who I had there.
Who are your receivers?
Anyway,
like
Kupp, Godwin, Woods.
Woods.
I probably went from you. Did you play Jones or Boyd?
Yeah, I played Jones.
Yeah, so I didn't play one of the cheap. I upgraded a wide receiver, basically. But
still, to get to Lamar Jackson, that's still $2,600 in salary.
Right,
yeah, $5,200 to $7,800. So, like, Did you not play a cheap run a 5K level running back?
I did not play.
Oh, so you didn't play CEH. Okay, so you didn't play CEH and you didn't play
3v3.
Right, you didn't play the Boyd Jones range of wide receiver.
Correct.
You didn't play Osborne even, right? You didn't have to play those guys. Okay, so so you were playing running backs that were basically Madison, Barkley, Mixon, Carson,
that whole tier. Yep.
Right, that whole. Okay, so I get. To me, it's not worth. To me, it wasn't worth it.
And so, I should have probably thought that through.
You also beat me, so I don't know why I'm yelling at you. You beat me with a 3-point quarterback.
Yeah, exactly. But I do think I should have thought that through, because my take on the whole week, but definitely on Sunday morning. Shameless plug. Ben Gretchen and I do a show on Roto Grinders every morning from 11:30 to 12:30. Leading up to lock, and it's funny because I actually he always hits me with something during that morning that I'm like, that was a really good point, that's interesting, and I hadn't thought about it, or I flesh out some thoughts. And the Fields one was actually one where I think, like, as we started to talk through it, I was just like, he was interested in Fields, and I think it was we talked about like the Tyson thing. People are excited for Justin Fields. Right? We've been excited for Justin Fields. He's a super cheap running quarterback. There wasn't a lot of value. I would argue you didn't need a lot of value. But anyway, he was cheap. Like, people were just excited for this. They ignored all the context about
But
Justin
how do you
Fields.
project him for that? I mean, the point that I'm making is that all the people that are saying that are also putting the inputs into the projections, and he still doesn't project well. So those are the point. Like, that's the same point with the Barkley thing. Barkley and Fields, to me, this past week were I'm listening to ETR, right? Mm-hmm. Right. This is the Saquon Barkley top plays, and I go into their own projections, and he doesn't even show up in the top 10 optimals. Like, that's the point that I make. How could he be? Then either your projections are wrong, mm-hmm. or you're trying to massage them. You would have to massage them up too much. That would be unrealistic. So, I'm going around looking at the actual numbers, going why is Justin Fields showing up in, if you tried to build a Justin Fields double stack, you were giving up 18 points in projection in order to do so. How, even if you're playing him naked, you're giving up too much for the ownership, because quarterback ownership in GPP, what the fuck does that matter?
Yeah,
right, because it's so spread out anyway. So unless you wouldn't be playing Fields. Instead of just playing him naked didn't get you anything, right? Because you'd be pairing. Exactly. Then once you start pairing him and playing the other side of the game, now all of a sudden your projection starts coming down. I could find lineups that are field stacks that are 8 points higher projected for the same ownership. So I'm like, why? That's why it flummoxed me from a numbers standpoint in the lineups, unless you projected him better, but no one did.
Yeah, and that was, I eventually got there. You get the starting news early in the week. You're like, oh my God, 5,200. And I'm also kind of bullish on Darnell Mooney. And so you're coming into the week, I'm like, that's viable, I think. I also just in general kind of like the single stacking this cheap running quarterback, right? Let's say Cam Newton last year. Doing something like that with Justin Fields. Maybe if we ever get frickin' Trey Lance in the lineup, you play Trey Lance and a cheap pass catcher or something, and you're single stacking that guy, and it allows you to get, say, a Chiefs stack, right? If you wanted to get the Chiefs, or you wanted to get that Seattle game or whatever, you wanted to get Derrick Henry, it allows you to do some interesting roster construction things. The issue became, and I kind of talked about this yesterday, is that it's not like you're doing this. I did this with Sam Darnold in week 1, right? Because nobody was doing it. He was super cheap. I was able to get access to things that other people weren't able to get access to, and hopefully he hangs in there.
The Panthers had a touchdown higher team total also.
Right. And so you have to, this is one of the things that, I'm still trying to get better at, is balancing the roster construction, correlation, all that type of stuff with projection. Brick talked about it on Lowell's that I thought was really, really good, where, at the end of the day, he's like, when you're doing these theoretical type things, even kind of the projections, it's guesswork. We're all guessing, right? But there is always a line, no matter how precise your guesswork is. There's always a line where the correlation and the leverage and all these different levers that we talk about all the time, right? Polling in tournaments. There's a projection. There's a line where you're figuring out how to weigh those things. How many points? Not only exactly how many points can I give up, but how many points am I actually giving up? Right? Like with this Justin Fields thing, I think, and you've basically outlined it. It took me a little bit to get there by Sunday, because I'm a little bit more theoretical. I know that you're like just totally on the numbers, and I sometimes take my own spin to some of those things. But like on Sunday, I was basically just like, not only are you getting no leverage with Justin Fields, because like you said, people are going to play him naked. Enough people will play him with one of his pass catchers, and then people might play a bring back or whatever. And once you start to add all these things in, not only are you not getting any actual like ownership leverage by playing him, you're also giving up points. You're also then on the same roster construction that everybody else is on, and you just start to compound these factors that I was just like, I was kind of trying to be nice about it yesterday, but Ben was really excited for Justin Fields and Justin Fields stacks, and I was basically just kind of like, I don't know how you can play it, even if your projections are different, right? Even if you did have him like more highly projected or whatever, even if you just believed like he was a higher projected player, a higher upside player, whatever. I don't know how you could get there with a Justin Fields lineup. Like I guess maybe Cole Kmet
it would have to be a naked
back
lineup. Like that's the only like what you do. Like you're doing it more like you said, you're doing it more theoretically. I'm doing it less theoretically, but still in some theoretical mode, because the correlation and leverage is not built in. But I'm going by, okay, I'm gonna go to my aggregate projections with the most accurate ownership that I believe it is. I'm putting in all the numbers that I believe it is and aggregating projections, and then okay, let me lock in Justin Fields, right? Give me the top 20 lineups. Let me take a look at what the ownership sum is in the projection. That's the most blunt way of looking at it. And then let me take a look at, now let me unlock Justin Fields and run run Kyler Murray stacks, run Jared Goff, for crying out loud. And it's like they all were better. Like the lineup as a whole was better, and the ownership didn't really. I could find a Justin Fields stack with a cumulative ownership of 85% was X, and I could find an ownership lineup of 85% that had 10 more points than X. So like that's the only way you could get it anywhere close would be if you ran him naked, and even then you're still giving up points at that point. So like to me that's how I view those things. Typically that's what I'm doing on Saturday, is that I finally put together, aggregate some projections. Obviously the Madison stuff, you have to kind of wiggle your way in there.
Yeah.
And then obviously I tweak stuff on Sunday morning, some of the numbers, re-aggregate and do all that type of stuff. But I mean, essentially Saturday I'm just running through going, what are the, in comparison? And I mean, I was getting a lot for the ownership, a lot of Bills, Josh Allen stuff. I was getting a lot of Giants, Daniel Jones. I was getting obviously Stafford, but that made sense. But but in those Stafford lineups, I was playing like it would have to be weird players in the other spots. And then I was getting like Lamar, Brown, Andrews, Swift type, and then I was getting Patrick Mahomes and cheapies, like Patrick Mahomes and like Mahomes, Hardman, Kelsey, Keenan Allen type lineups, or Austin Eckler. Yep. But a lot of those lineups involved playing like Osborne like you're playing 2 4K wide receivers. So I had a Mahomes line. I had a Mahomes, a Hardman, Kelsey lineup, and I'm trying to find that, like that's my AJ Green lineup. Yep. That's my like kind of like the low 4Ks, that kind of range. But I think running like. That's what I tell people during the shows. Like, if you want to know something, just run lineups. Just run like an optimizer does not have to be used to just build your lineups when you're building your lineups. It can be used as just an efficiency tool of, well, let me take a look at Josh Allen double stacks. How do they project? What do they look like? Right? What do they project like? And then I see the Josh Allen double stacks that have Cooper Kupp and Chris Godwin in it also. And I go, the ownership sum is 138%. And I go, this may not be enough leverage for the slant, right? This may be fine for the game changer or something. And then I go, okay, what's my ownership for the slant need to be? So I just scroll through lineups. I just scroll like let me look at a lineup without Kupp in it. Let me take a look at a lineup without Barkley. Like take a look at a lineup without Madison. Because now you're dropping off so much more percentage of ownership and then seeing what the projection difference is. Now, I don't know what that delta is going to be from a slate-to-slate basis until you actually run the lineups and see. And I saw that if I left out like two of the chalkier pieces, I would get down to like 85, 90% ownership sum, and I would give up like 4 or 5 points in projection. And I'd be like, okay, I don't mind. That seems fine for the slant. Yep. And I'm like, okay, now I know the range of where I'm building lineups around, and give me 150 of them. Like, in a diversified way. In the like for the SPY and the power sweep stuff, I'm now at more like 110, 115. Or that's why I was getting Kupp in a lot of lineups, because it's like, how many points do I need to really knock off, especially when I'm playing like 3+1s, right? So I'm getting the correlation there, so it's naturally going to knock my projection down. But I don't. But Eric, like you do that in your head, like the stuff that I'm describing. But do you think, maybe it's just the way that you work, that you'd be more inclined on Saturday night or Sunday morning to run, since you're only building 3 lineups or something, that maybe using lineup HQ as a tool like that, and like even using just like I use content as a sanity check, just use it as okay, I want to play these Lamar, Brown, Swift lineups. Let me lock those 3 guys in and let me see what these lineups look like. Let me see what combinations I could have.
I do that.
Okay.
I do that. I typically am still too stubborn to, like pick one of the top ones. I'll still like tinker around with it or whatever. But that's sanity check. That's a perfect way to put it. I definitely, again, right, wrong, or indifferent. My general process is kind of, like you said, consuming content all week, looking at projections, looking at ownership, all that kind of stuff. And I typically land on like a theme. And this week it was that Ravens game that I just thought was, kind of the highest leverage, however you want to say it, right? The highest leverage, the easiest path to first, right? We used to talk about that. The cleanest path. I thought that was Lamar stacks with Swift. So like I had 100% Swift. And I had 100% 3
lineups.
Lamar.
And just to be clear for the listener,
multiple sites
sounds like a lot. It's 3 lineups.
Yeah, on multiple sites and everything. So I did play FanDuel and Yahoo this week, which we're really branching out. And I also learned how much money I feel like I've been leaving on the table with like FanDuel Cash and Yahoo Cash and stuff. We don't need to.
The FanDuel Cash is, I don't. Well, also I flood the $1 and $2 games since I'm not restricted there yet.
Yeah.
So like you don't realize how much volume you could get in the $1 and $2 50/50s. They just, I don't know if there's a limit there, but it seems like I could just like every couple of hours throughout the week, I'm just like, okay, let me enter 3 more, let me enter 3.
Yes.
And I was playing the 5s and 10s, but you'd look at some, like in DraftKings, you do find some lineups that are like, I don't know how this person played. You look through your head-to-heads, and I play primarily, like more than half of my volume in cash is in head-to-heads.
Yeah.
And in DraftKings, you do get some weirdos. You get like, I don't understand this lineup at all. Like nothing is good. But for the most part, it's a lot of 3v3s. It's a lot of
close.
It's close. FanDuel's. I mean, I'm playing, and sometimes you're losing to them. Sometimes you're losing to them, and you go, and you look at the lineup. I'm not talking about bad constructions. I'm talking about just absolutely bizarre, off the board, like someone that's jamming in like Mahomes, Hill, Kelsey, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and then and Mecole Hardman like in cash, and then playing they're playing in their flex a second tight end at 4,500 that literally was on the IR, was like not even, it was inactive the game. Because basically they just said, I'm just going to play all the Chiefs, and whatever fits in the rest of my lineup, that's the way. Like, you'll see those types of lineups. Or you'll see lineups, I mean, you know what I'm talking. I mean, if you play FanDuel Cash, that's what do you think? What do you think I do that there? Like, I can't not. It's how do you not play on FanDuel? Like,
it was a lesson.
To me, the cash lineup was essentially a 1v1 of, do you play Woods or do you play Mike Williams?
Yes,
Like,
I
to me,
know.
if you weren't making that decision, you were not on the right construction.
It was so
Of course, I
like
played Woods instead of Williams, but I
me
still
too.
got that. I still cashed.
One, yeah, exactly,
Right? I
same.
took the floor because
I'm
I
sure we
figured
have
if I'm playing Cup, I'll play Cup and Woods together, and I don't care
yep.
where the points go. But you were playing
Man,
Lamar. You were playing Lamar. You were playing Lamar.
Madison, Saquon, Kelsey, right? Cup, Godwin, Metcalf.
No, you
Is
didn't
that
have
what
to
it
play.
was?
You didn't have to play Godwin. You didn't have to play
Can't
Kelsey.
remember what it
No,
was.
you were playing Metcalf.
I played Kelsey.
Okay, but you could have. You could play. You were playing Metcalf.
Yeah,
You were
Metcalf.
playing one of the Rams wide receivers, either up or down.
Mm-hmm.
You were playing someone at 6,000. You were playing someone, either Mike Williams, Robert Woods, or Tyler Boyd. Something in that. Something you most likely were playing either Woods or Williams. The defenses didn't matter. You could have gone up. I went up to the Broncos. I was able to get up to the Broncos.
See, I played the Bengals. That's why I went.
Right, you could go up or down. It was the
Bengals,
Bengals, the Browns, the Bills, anything with. If you had a defense with a B, it fit on FanDuel. But I'm just saying, like, we're naming like it's essentially like your running back slots are full. Like if you're not playing Barkley and Madison on FanDuel, like I don't know what I played Mixon as my third running back at 6,700. No, I mean I got that. I mean to me, and I won on FanDuel. I don't know. I could go to my Roto Tracker. I think I won 86% of my head to heads. I mean like, and I missed on playing Woods over Williams.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I
Me
missed
too.
on that. I had 9 points from Mixon where I could have had more points from someone else, and I still won 86% of my head to heads. Right? On DraftKings, like I'm late swapping just to get something. Right? So yeah, so like that's why do you think I only had a -7? Like, yeah, I bombed in DK Cash main slate, but like I made up like everything. Whatever I lost in DK Cash main slate, I made up in FanDuel main cash. Right? Yep. Because I mean it's not gonna go like that every week, but I mean I look through some of these lineups and I go, how did you not get there? Like, and there wasn't a collusion lineup or anything. It wasn't even those. There was clear 2v2s, 3v3s, defensive moves, stuff like that. But like, I don't know. To me, that's more of a to me that's a mystery. I don't get it.
Yeah. So anyway, like I was saying, big lesson learned. Same thing. I played Yahoo and I think I just clicked optimize on the blitz and ran it, and I think it had Najee. Like CEH, Mike Williams, whatever. So that was just like a printing press.
Right.
Yeah, it was just a printing press. And so I realized that was a big lesson learned, was that why have you not spent, like, it's not like it required that much time for me to do that. So like I said, that was a big lesson learned. But to the tournament thing is, I'm definitely, like I said, I am this kind of like a little bit more, I massage out, the theory behind what I think is the one angle to the slate, right? What is my one clean path? I'm kind of like, it's not as much numbers based. It's certainly like, I'm not going to play the worst projected stack of the slate or anything
one thing
like
that you had, like for instance, that you said during the morning show with Gretsch that I agreed with completely, was the Lenny Fournette move. I played a bunch of Fournette.
Me too. I played him on. Well, I've played him once.
Yeah. Right. Well, right. But so you actually played him more than I did, right? I mean, technically,
yeah,
right? I played like 20% of him in 150 lineups, because to me that was the clearly, like, how does this Rams Bucks game bust? It's more likely to bust because the running backs are the ones, either Fournette or Michelle are getting all the touchdowns, and it's a slow paced, more defensive game. So why not? So Lenny did not project much differently than CEH.
His projection wasn't that. That's the other thing that I didn't bring up, but I was going to bring up, is like, I know that the name looks bad and the name on CEH looks good. And even like, Mike Davis always looks good in projections. I'm like, I get it. It looks bad. But even from a projection sense, it does. He's not really that different. And then, like, do you want to play Cup? Just play Lenny. Don't play Godwin. Play Lenny. He takes your running back spot, blah, blah, blah. I was like, I know this is bad, guys. Like, I know. And then like Chad is shaming me.
If you take the names off the things, you'd look at the numbers and go, why aren't I playing the guy that projects for 0.8 less at 3 times less ownership? And you go, like, how do you argue with that? Unless you're telling me that but if you tell me, my projection had CH 5 points high, okay. If that's, I mean, yeah, you'd be different than everyone else, but I mean, like, I'm more inclined to say that your projection was wrong, right, than anything else. But like, then at least I get it. So like, especially when Godwin and Cup were going to be so owned, like a 7% owned Lenny Fournette seemed like this is how it fails, and this is who gains if it does fail. And we already have a running back week where you could plug in 14 different guys, and it just, you throw it up in the air and you come down, and Najee Harris has 19 targets, right? Because Ben Roethlisberger can't throw the ball more than 6 yards.
Oh, that was so bad.
But I mean, like, so to me, your argument with Fournette and Michelle and Mike Davis, like we're flipping coin. If you're going to argue about it, we're arguing about 52-48 decisions.
Yeah.
So if you're wrong from a median standpoint, you'd only be wrong by a very small margin. And if you're going to be right, you'd be right by a small margin. So why not just side with the ownership there, and just, like, in the long run, if these guys are going to be 2.5 times differently owned, like, you make more money just playing the other guy, even if you have to look at these numbers now. Can I go back to the old numbers? Am I yelling at Cloud?
No,
like these numbers, like number 7 for a running back, number 2 for a like, dude. Anytime I see single digits, I'm like, did they put in another quarterback?
I like Jamar Chase being able to be number 1. Like, I like the wide receiver aspect of the single digit things, but yeah, like linebackers that are number 6 and 7 and stuff, that really throws me off, because I have no, like, who tackled him? Was it a DB? Was just a wide receiver playing on defense? Like, what's happening? I
didn't look it up. Is there a reason? Because now they used to. I know that there was a number convention before to make it easier on referees to know about ineligible players, and like, because you would always have, like, the linemen were always in the 60s, right?
Yeah.
The defensive linemen were in the 70s. The linebackers were in the 50s. The cornerbacks would be in the 20s. The safeties would be in the 40s. And then you got, like, the teens would be the wide receivers. Tight ends would typically be in the 80s, right? 89 would be a tight end. The running back would be in the 20s. The quarterback in the teens, and like, it was easy to just look at the team and go, oh, that's that guy, that's this guy, or whatever. And now it's just like is the reason why they changed it that it's just like, screw the referees, we're just going to let them wear whatever they want?
Well, they didn't open it up for offensive linemen. And so the offensive lineman convention thing, every offensive lineman have to be, 50
because of ineligible players
79.
downfield, it makes it easier.
But
right.
Everybody else can do whatever they want, except those are only offensive line numbers. Offensive linemen can't be other numbers, and receivers can't be offensive line numbers. But everything else is like, yeah, you play defensive line, you want to be number 2, go for it. We don't really care.
Because there would be no other reason. Because really, the only time that you need to make sure that a person is in a certain spot is for, like, offensive alignment and ineligible players,
or vice versa. Yeah, exactly. It has been. I still don't know who everybody is. Like, Sterling Shepard still gets me, which I guess he's hurt now, so maybe it won't. But, like, he's been 89 or 87.
87.
Now I'm forgetting. 87. His whole career, and he gets targeted so damn much by the Giants.
Now he's 3.
It's 3, yes, which was his college. So a lot of these guys are going back to their college numbers, which, that also makes me feel old, because I don't remember, I have to think about the fact that I watched them in college play, 10 years ago or whatever it was. But
I remember the Falcons game. I didn't know Kyle Pitts' number, and I thought Matt Ryan was replaced. Like, do they have the backup? And, like, no, Kyle Pitts is 8. I'm like, yeah, but he's a tight end.
Yeah, right.
Because sometimes they line up in the backfield or something, and I go, do they have a second quarterback? Like, it always feels like I'm getting Taysom Hill in any game, right?
Yes, that is so true. So the Kyle Pitts, it's so funny that you bring up Kyle Pitts, because he was not like results wise or whatever, but I wanted to get your take on this, because this was kind of like my theme of the week, if you will. Where, like, I had a fine week, right? It was fine. It wasn't, I've certainly had far better weeks, and I've certainly had far worse already this year. But I feel like we're at this point in the season where sure, maybe we can start to take some things away, but even when we start to take things away and maybe change, some inputs to our projections or change some assumptions, not even saying that that's wrong, but people, the where that really, where the issue really becomes is not just maybe changing some of your inputs and assumptions, it is changing them for the wrong reasons. And like the Kyle Pitts thing is the one that keeps jumping out to me. Is like, if you want to change your inputs on Mike Williams because he keeps, he's the target, leader in that offense, and maybe we think that continues, I think that that's fine. But people are changing assumptions on, say, players like Kyle Pitts because of Kyle Pitts and not because of the situation that he's in. You know what I mean? So people are out on Kyle Pitts now, despite basically everything that you wanted to see coming into the year. He's doing what you wanted. Matt Ryan just
it's not like he's not seeing the field. It's
not
like he's not going on routes. He's going on routes on most of these dropbacks.
He got an end zone target last week, and he drew a pass interference in the Reds and in the end zone. He's, like you said, he's out there. He's actually kind of playing receiver as much as he's playing tight end. It's just Matt Ryan. I think it might be like Matt Ryan and Big Ben might need to just go walk off into the sunset together, because it might just be over. Or maybe Arthur Smith is not as good as we thought. But my point being, like, the idea of like being right but being wrong at the same time, or being wrong but being right, like you I think if you played Kyle Pitts this weekend, it was a totally, it didn't get there, whatever but he did what you hoped. There's the results didn't come. But people are doing the opposite, where it's like, no, I was right about being low on Kyle Pitts because he's a rookie tight end, whatever. Well, you might actually be right about Kyle Pitts, but your reasons are wrong. And so, like, how do we handle that kind of thing moving forward? That's like, this Monday morning quarterback type thing. That's the big trend that I keep seeing, is people want to draw conclusions, but like so many times we're drawing conclusions for the wrong reasons.
Well, I think you've tweeted it out that like touchdowns are so variant that you take a player that performed poorly, quote unquote.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say like Mike Davis had an end zone like he could have gotten in on the 1 yard line, and he didn't. Now imagine if he did. Now he has 17 points, and now I don't look like an idiot for having Mike Davis in my lineup at 5,100, right? CEH could have not gotten in on that passing play, and then not hit the 100-yard bonus, and he's sitting at 11 points. Like we're talking about the matter of one play.
Yeah.
Like that's Kyle Pitts. Let's say Kyle Pitts caught that touchdown. Kyle Pitts would have been like the third highest tight end on the entire slate. Yeah, I mean, like, tight end is hot. Like you tweeted out earlier, like even on the season after 3 weeks, Kyle Pitts is like tight end 9. Right? And he's pretty much done nothing.
Nothing.
Right?
Yeah.
So, like, especially at those types of positions, like tight end is a scarce position because, like, it's a wasteland. There's nothing there. And at running back, like, to me, that's the most variant thing. I mean, look at Jonathan Taylor. Like, people were saying this week, Jonathan Taylor, like, it's a perfect. You can't. This is what annoys me, that people use the same argument to argue this different things for different people.
Yes.
So for instance, here, we've done this before, right? With the ownership and go that, okay, like, what's the difference between this and this, right? And we got the Tony Pollard one, right, last week. Jonathan Taylor, what was the talking point? He's gotten the most amount of red zone work,
yep,
right? Without scoring a touchdown, right? Yep. So people were talking about Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan, he's 6,700 against the Titans,
yep,
right? Like he could get. I mean, look, he was been unlucky the first 2 weeks. He's gotten the end zone carries. He's gotten the yes. Marlon Mack is inactive. Okay, so you're better. It's like, and then he's 6,700. What if I told you that there was a running back that had a higher fantasy points expectation than Dalvin Cook over the first 2 weeks? Jonathan Taylor isn't that. Like, had the He had the 4th highest running if you go, by expectation based on the workload, and he was higher than Cook. Would you want to play that guy over Taylor? Well, that guy was 5,100, and his name was Mike Davis. Okay, so if you're going to make the Taylor argument is that he ran bad. That's essentially what the argument, based on the underlying stats of how he's being used, he ran bad. Well, Mike Davis ran bad also. So you can't tell me, if you're going to tell me that Jonathan Taylor's a good play, then you can't tell me Mike Davis is a bad play also. I mean, you can't tell me that. So you can't use these by expectation type of things with Kyle Pitts. By expectation, Kyle Pitts is a top 5 running back, top 5 tight end. And that's primarily because most of the tight ends suck.
Yeah.
But just because
we're not even endorsing him, it's just the position.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's the point. Like, if you're going to use those types of arguments, you have to apply them across the board. Marquise Brown yesterday left the most points on the table. Right? The old, I mean, I believe the old connotation of Marquise Brown from a year ago, when he was only seeing, he was the big play guy, only seeing like 4 or 5 targets a game, and they were running the ball too often. This Ravens, they're running him differently. Watkins is there actually drawing cover because they used to have like Willie Snead. No one cares about him. That Marquise Brown should be a $6,500 wide receiver, I believe.
Agreed.
Based on now, has he reached that? Like, well, no, dude, Marquise Brown could have broke the slate yesterday. Right? He could have had 50 points yesterday. And he didn't. So what's going to end up happening next week and the week after is people are going to say, and they're going to look at air yards, they're going to look at the expected points, and they're going to say, well, Marquise Brown, his price didn't go up. He's 5,800, right? Or they're going to mention Cortland Sutton or something based on the air yards. Or that Nelson Aguilar had a bunch of, who cares about? I mean, sometimes they're just chucking the ball, and who cares?
Aguilar and Jacoby Myers were the top 2 leaders on the entire week in air yards, and it was week 1 or week 2 that the Patriots, Mac Jones, like had the least amount of air yards of like any quarterback, and people were like, "Oh my God, is he ever going to throw the ball down the field?" And then 2 weeks later, both of his receivers had almost 200. Right.
Well, they were down that game. That's the main reason.
Yeah.
But
it's just funny.
But the point that I'm making is that if you're going to make those types of arguments, this expected, I mean, we see it in MLB, expected ISO, XFIP, right? The X type of things, like based on the workload, based on the production, based on these percentages, you're trying to figure out if a player is running good or running bad. That's essentially what it is. So you can't, if you're going to measure people by running bad, you have to apply it to all the players. And if you're going to do by running good, you have to apply it to all the players. So, like, did Najee Harris run good, or was he under expectation the first 2 weeks? We don't know. We really don't know that. You'd be guessing on how they're going to use him. Of course, Deontay Johnson was out. Juju got hurt. There's some context there, but if you're gonna put Najee Harris with a 36% target share now, you're probably wrong. But to say that he's not at least a 10% target share running back based on his week 1 workload, you'd be fucking wrong also. So, but whatever you do to apply that, your point that you make on Twitter all the time is what I'm saying, is don't apply one argument for one player to confirm your priors or confirm your biases, and then because you don't like some other guy, you're going to say, well, that's because he's a rookie tight end. Like,
Right.
well, how about other guys? I mean, like, it's either one or the other. You can't make the same case and say 2 different things for 2 different people, unless you have some compelling reason why they're the outlier.
Yeah. Right. And the thing I wonder about, because I'm not creating my own projections or anything like that, is how difficult is it to factor all of that into these inputs? Making sure that you're appropriately right, because at the end of the day, there's a human setting target shares and setting, efficiency levels and all that kind of stuff. And I am not good enough at all the math side of things to figure out, this. So I'm asking possibly a stupid question. But how do you, as someone who is like really, using the math side of things, I know you're pulling in the projections, not necessarily doing them yourselves. But how are you thinking about that part as we get to this point in the season? Like, are you, like you said, you lean more heavily on say one projection set, but just this idea, like, right, that there are expectations for certain players. Some players are falling above and below, and there's certain target shares, and we only know so much. And I know you're just using the projections, but I'm just trying to kind of think through that in terms of, because I'm using the projections again, like in like a looser way, and so trying to be able to appropriately gauge kind of those bands and those like error bars in the projections is something that's valuable to me, but I don't have a good answer for that. Does that make sense? Kind of what I'm asking,
right?
Or what I'm getting at.
That makes sense. I mean, like it's typically the outliers. Like, for instance, I thought it was laughable, 14% in the millie, Rondale Moore at 5K.
Yeah.
Like I get it, but those are the types of people. This is the argument against Rondale Moore. He's barely on the field. It's like 20% snap share or something. But of course, when he's on the field, he gets I mean, like, it's one of those things. Well, when he's on the field, he gets targeted. And then you could, I guarantee you, I could find someone else that fits a case where he's only on the field like 40% of the time, and when he gets targeted, and they'll tell me, how do you play him? He only has 40% of the time, right? Like
100%.
Right? That's the point, right? Aren't we making the same thing? It's like,
yes,
like you can't play Rondale Moore because he's not on the field enough, but you can play Mecole Hardman, right?
Right.
Who's also a very similar type of player. Now, I don't know what it is. Yeah, Mecole Hardman's probably on the field more than Rondale Moore is on the field. But the case for the anti-Hardman people, which are typically right, the Hardman people are that he's a role play. He's like, why are you playing? You're playing him for one big play, but he has barely a target share or anything. But then they'll go, well, Rondale Moore, they schemed plays too. Like, dude, that's Mecole Hardman also. Like, you're making the same thing. Cordell Patterson is coming in too much for Mike Davis. It's like, but Mike Davis, based on his workload, has more of an expectation per touch than, like, you can't make different arguments for different people for the same thing that you're looking at. Or with like LaVisca, there's another one that, like, we could look at some of these guys that don't get on the field as often as other players, and then make this, and Scotty Miller this week with Antonio Brown out. And if you wanted to say Tyler Johnson instead, pick whatever third Bucs wide receiver you want. Why were they barely owned and Rondale Moore is like 15% owned in the millie, other than the fact that he's run good, right?
Yes.
But the actual role in the offense for a good offense, because we're not talking about like Quintus Cephas in a Lions offense. We're talking about a high team total Bucs passing offense and a Cardinals high team total passing offense. It's a similar type of thing. So so just because you don't like Scotty Miller, I mean, like, because Rondale Moore is a rookie and it's exciting.
He's exciting.
Yeah. Like it almost feels like with these guys, like Justin Fields, like Trey Lance, like Kyle Pitts, like Rondale Moore, like whoever, Jamar Chase, Devonta Smith. People are. It's almost it's weird to say. People are playing it like it's a flush draw in poker. Like, if you're gonna play a Scotty Miller, right, on a week like this, like it's not like Scotty Miller could be a 7K receiver. He's not a 7K receiver. Jamar Chase could end up, 2 years from now, he'd be laughing that he's only 5,000.
Yeah.
Devonta's, like, any of these rookies, they have so much potential. Now, doesn't mean they're going to live up to their potential. A lot of them are going to bust completely. But Kyle Pitts, we could be talking about 2 years from now saying, Kyle Pitts, yeah, I'm going to pay Kyle Pitts $7,800. Why wouldn't I, right? Like, on DraftKings. Or 2 years from now, we'll be going, oh, remember that guy that got drafted? Like, remember the third tight end for the Lions that used to be on the Falcons? Like, we're going to talk about Kyle Pitts that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be one of the two. We don't know which one that is, but we know for sure that Darren Fells ain't that, right? Like, we know for sure that he's not going to turn into that. So people look at the prices and the salaries and go, like, it's more likely that KJ Osborne, a second-year breakout wide receiver, right? It's that KJ Osborne at 3,500 could be a 5K, 6K wide receiver than Scotty Miller could ever be. So because there's that, but it's all psychological, because from a projection standpoint, there's no reason to think that in this one single game. But people are like, have that confirmation bias of like, well, this guy's 23 versus a 32-year-old. Like, no one wants to, like Manny Sanders. I listen to Gilcast, and Davis is like, how do you play, or Sammy or whatever. How do you play a 35-year-old wide receiver? It's like, well, Manny Sanders and A.J. Green did pretty good, right? Marvin Jones is doing pretty good in Jacksonville. Like you sometimes they're getting a 22% target share on a good offense, and it doesn't matter how old they are. Maybe in week 14, when they're constantly questionable on the injury report, maybe then you could stop playing them, or
Right.
But like, to me, like, if you're gonna make that argument, then why are you ever playing Tom Brady? Yet people seem to play Tom Brady, right? Like, obviously it's a quarterback, it's a little bit different. But like, you can't make the same argument two different ways for two different people. And do you think that flush draw analogy works? That these rookies, the younger guys, seem like, I have top pair and a flush draw. So it's like, would I rather play the higher top pair, like the higher top pair hand that has no possibility of making a flush, even though it's a slightly better hand? Or would I rather play the hand that he could be type of thing? But to me, that inflates the ownership also. So like, and at the end of the day, it's already like factored into the market.
And so that's a big thing that I've been trying to make sure that I'm factoring, because I will admit to being, on certain archetypes of players a little bit more, a little bit less on the Manny Sanders, a little bit more on the Jamar Chase. And I'm okay with that, as long as you're, like you said, you're applying it appropriately and understanding where the market is doing the same thing as you. You know what I mean? Like, I played Jamar Chase this week, but like, if Jamar Chase was the wide receiver that got steamed, right? If Jamar Chase was like super low owned.
And compared to Boyd, like, you played Chase as a way to get away from, like, Chase in the slant was Chase was 6.6%, and Boyd was 13.9. So yeah, so that's the reason.
Right. So, but like, if everybody had piled on Chase,
then you play
now
Boyd.
We might look, we look to the older guy, right? If everybody piled, if the Bills were all unowned, so it didn't really matter. But if everybody was piling on Gabe Davis, and everything said the projections look basically the same for Manny Sanders, and you play Manny Sanders. So I definitely, between you and I, who leans more with the Gilcast guys, of course it is me, but I think that's the most important thing, is like understanding that. Like, I definitely have an inherent bias towards the younger guys, but knowing it and being able to apply it appropriately, right? Like, I played Jamar Chase, but it's because like, I have a little bias towards Jamar Chase, but he was the appropriate play given all the other context, in my mind. And so,
right. Well, I mean, if you take a look at those two very similar situations, the higher owned play was Tyler Boyd and Marvin Jones. The lower owned guy was Chase and Laviska Shenault. Right. Yeah. So in those cases, but you shouldn't be doing it in the opposite cases. Right. When Rondell Moore is 15% owned and AJ Green is 1% owned, like, that's the reason. But if it turned out the other way, so it's not a young versus old thing. It's more of owned versus not owned. Like, it's if it's already priced into, if the potential is already priced into the market, you're not gaining. It seems like I can make the flush, but it's like, well, enough of the field appropriately has that probability. It's very similar to stock, right? In the stock market, a lot of times, you know how many people, you'll see on Twitter or whatever, that, something, catastrophic happens and the stock market goes up, right? Maybe not. I'm not talking about an unexpected catastrophe. Like, the jobs report comes out and it's a bad jobs report and the stock market goes up. And it's like, well, because it probably was already priced in. I mean,
Yeah.
or like the recovery, right. like the whole, like people are diving into the stock market towards the summer, going like, oh, summer, everything's opening up and it's business will be good. It's like, yeah, everyone expected that back in December. Like that's why the stock market went back up in November. Once the vaccine information started coming out, people bought in. So like now, it's like, yeah, now it's happening, but really that price has already been in the market for 6 months already.
Yeah.
Right? It's looking forward. So it's very similar to some of this ownership on the younger guys. Because even Kyle Pitts, I mean, Kyle Pitts was 23% owned in the Game Changer.
I know, that was
17% in the SPY. I mean, 12% in the Millie. I mean, it's not like, I mean, he was one of the higher owned tight ends on the week. Even with poor performances. But that's primarily due to, you take a look at tight end and you go, I mean, Tyler Conklin ain't going to be anything other than Tyler Conklin, right? Yeah. You take a look at some of these tight ends and you go, Max Williams ain't going to be anything more than Max Williams, right? Carolina just got rid of Dan Arnold, right? So is it Tommy Tremble? Tommy Tremble.
Tommy Tremble season. The guy, I mean, I do like Tommy Tremble, but he catches like 10 balls in his entire college career, and we're really excited for this dude as an NFL fantasy tight end. Looking at the tight end thing is, so one thing that I was just going to add super quick is I think it's okay, you know, especially if you're like me, you know, hand building just a few teams. If you want to align your bets with the guys that you think that have the flush draw, I don't think that that's wrong. Like breaking ties, again, making sure all else including ownership, leverage, all that kind of stuff, right? If we have the Chase Boyd thing, that's not all else. All else is not equal in that. But all else equal, if I'm choosing between, you know, Kyle Pitts and again, this is not it, but like Kyle Pitts and Tyler Conklin are the same price and the same projection and the same ownership. Breaking that tie with Kyle Pitts because he has that flush draw, I think is fine. The problem is the market that's not how we're using that. You know what I mean? The market is boosting the guys with the flush draw like Kyle Pitts very often, not all the time, but very, very frequently is boosting Kyle Pitts. I'm sure, you know, tight end is kind of a little bit of a unique situation, but like, but I mean, DK Metcalf has to be one of the best examples. DK Metcalf has like this flush draw to be, you know, look at him. I mean, he's the Derrick Henry of wide receivers. We envision the upside every single week. We see that he's going to be the next, you know, he's going to break the slate. You know, Tyler Lockett can't do it again. He's 5'9" and 170 pounds or whatever. It's a different form of this flush draw, but DK Metcalf always gets it, right? Why is Justin Jefferson always more owned than Adam Thielen? Because he's the next young superstar wide receiver, right? And so in those situations, all else is not equal. I think it is okay to break ties with the flush draw, right? If I told you Kyle Pitts is 7,800 later in the year, would you have said, yes, I wish I played him at 5K? Sure, of course. But like we're in this weird situation where, like you said, all these things are priced in, and a lot of the times priced in way too much. Like I like Kyle Pitts, and I played Kyle Pitts on one team, but I did not foresee that ownership. It was not because, you know, I was okay with that ownership. I think that was probably a mistake as we saw, you know, the results come in. And so I think it's just at this point in the season, I think there's a lot of these little interesting variables that, you know, some are factored into projections, some are factored into ownership projections, some aren't. You know, the market is still very reactionary, and sometimes, like we said, for the wrong reasons, and sometimes not doing it the same for everybody, right? Mike Davis versus whatever. I'll be really interested to see what we do with like Najee this week, you know, after 19 targets and those kinds of things. But just making sure, you know, I think it's just an interesting time to kind of be in this market because it is very evolved and efficient compared to what we were playing in like 5 years ago. But it's evolved so much that we have so much information and so much data at our fingertips and everything that people like get really anchored to specific points. And sometimes we talked about that's like the narrative things. Sometimes that's the young player. Sometimes it is the projection. Sometimes it is the expected points, but it's never the same for everybody. And so that's the most fascinating thing to me, I think.
Right. Like you mentioned that the Metcalf Lockett thing. Here's the game changer. Okay, which I have to assume some of these Seattle guys are late swaps.
Yeah.
In some way. Metcalf was 26.89%.
He's the
Tyler
second highest
Lockett
owned
was
wide receiver.
4.7%.
In the play action, Tyler Lockett's the second highest owned wide receiver.
Right, because
of
$3 bias.
Play action, Tyler Lockett is 16.7%, the second highest owned wide receiver. In the game changer, he is 4.7%, and Metcalf is 27%. What was Metcalf in the
26.8. Now I'm not saying that Metcalf is better than Lockett. I think
right.
At the same price, I'd rather play Metcalf, but when the discrepancy between ownership is 26-4, then it isn't. But in the Millie, Metcalf is easily Lockett shouldn't be more owned than Metcalf, right?
Yep.
So really, it's the disparity. It's not necessarily even the raw ownership percentage. It just feels funny to me that probably people that needed to swap in the game changer swapped out their Cup for Metcalf and ended up on the second highest owned wide receiver when Lockett was actually Lockett at 4% would have been the play, because they're going, I'm gonna switch over to Metcalf, because I'm assuming Cup came in at 40% in the game changer. I'm assuming before PM games he was like 60%.
Yeah,
and it went to other places. So
Jefferson also is the fifth highest owned wide receiver and Osborne is the sixth highest owned wide receiver in the game changer. And so if you were pivoting, the Cup, Godwin, Woods type stuff, you go down to Osborne in order to go up and get Jefferson or Metcalf or whatever. It's ownership. This ownership is pretty fascinating.
Right. I just like the fact that you take a look at some of the younger wide receivers, and it's like, okay, people wanted to play Osborne, Hardman, right? Like that range. Hunter Renfrow, 1.9% owned, right? He 2% in the SPY, 2.4% in the slant, 18.7 points on, and he actually has a target share, and the Raiders actually throw the ball. I mean, Peyton Barber also got 100 yards and a touchdown. I don't know.
He's the second highest scoring running back or something like that, wasn't he? Let me see.
Peyton Barber in the slant was 0.2% owned. In the Millie, was 0.38% owned. In the SPY, 0.29. Game changer was unowned. 26.2 points.
I know it's just 1 week, and I'm not trying to be that guy or whatever, but when you look at these running back points, it's such an I was kind of talking about the state of this NFL right now is kind of bizarre, particularly as it relates to running backs. So this is just average collective ownership across all these contests that I have pulled up in Results DB right now. But the highest scoring running back, Najee Harris, 31 points, average 8.4%. Kareem Hunt, second highest scoring running back, 1.3. Peyton Barber, 0.2, 26 fantasy points. Madison, okay, so there was one of your chalk guys, is the fourth. James Robinson is fifth with 1.4% average ownership. Swift, right? Derrick Henry actually wasn't very popular, is up there. Alvin Kamara is 3%. Giovanni Bernard is 0.07, 0.07%. And so it's yes, I know that there's some chalk and stuff mixed in there, and it's never this simple as this one thing. But I feel like it's kind of wild, right? You talked about the Najee thing, being in that same group as why is Najee lower than Saquon or whatever? And there's all these running backs, and there's so much uncertainty at the running back position, and they're so game script dependent that it was just a little thing that caught my eye where it's I feel like we can push, how contrarian we're being at running back, given just how the NFL is kind of playing out right now, especially as it relates compared to, like you said, Justin Fields seems okay, but Justin Fields is just not matching Kyler Murray and Lamar Jackson and those offenses, the elite offenses, the Chiefs and the Chargers and stuff. Washington.
That's what I go for. A lot of people, this isn't 2 or 3 years ago. Because remember, I used to be all on the vomit stacks.
Yep.
The totals are too high now. We're getting multiple 5 50-point total games and higher. It's not just one, and you hope that it busts and then you get a low-scoring game, that outperforms. You can't do that anymore. So I'm playing the high-scoring games and then to me, the contrarian play is the running backs. I mean, because you're filling up all your slots, obviously, with the stack with the wide receivers and tight ends, and then, well, how do you get the leverage? Well, you got running back spots there. And
Peyton Barber.
Well, it doesn't have to be Peyton Barber, but it could be.
I know.
I mean, just the wide range. Doesn't it feel like, even though it's not best ball, that DFS think if it works in 0 RB builds, why doesn't it not work in DFS? Like, the reason that you do 0 RB in best ball is because running back injuries are high, and running back variance is high, and running back workload because of split RBBCs is, who knows, up in the air.
Unpredictable.
Right. So, but we could view that, like most people are able to say, oh, over a 17, 18-week season, I get that, right? But I don't have to pick out the weeks, right? It's like one of these weeks it'll be the Giovanni Bernard week. This one wasn't.
Right.
But in DFS you always we could draft every week, so we could pick out the ones that we want. But even picking them out, we're showing that we're not even good at doing that. The projections are so fragile that the differences between 18 running backs between a 12 and 18 point running back projection, you might as well just throw up in your air and just go, well, choose 2 and hopefully you get on the right side of variance. That's what you do for 0 RB builds in best ball. So maybe you should be thinking more about that when they're that close. We're not talking about like Madison and Barkley on FanDuel. They projected too high more than any other running back. But on DraftKings, Madison was the highest. I get it. But outside of that, you could have played anyone. Yeah. And I think I'm more likely to get different there than try to play, I'm not playing Jared Goff. I'm not playing Goff, Raymond, Hawkinson, why? The likelihood of that, I'll play Josh Allen. I'll play Josh Allen every week. I've said that before. You don't really like this Bills game against the Washington. I'm playing the slant. 10% of my lineups are going to be Josh Allen every week, no matter who he's playing. They just throw the ball too much. The double stacks could get there on any game. I'm just devoting 10% of my bankroll towards it. And if he gets there, I hope I have the right pieces around him.
Yeah, and the running back thing is such a good point. I'm selfishly glad we kind of went through it, because I've actually been saying this, and this has been week 1. I talked to Gretch about this on the morning show, where it was my thesis basically coming into this year. Obviously, it relates different, like you said, to best ball and season-long fantasy football and stuff. But basically was just this running back position is so fragile. We know that inherently already, but it's only going to continue to get more and more fragile and more unpredictable. And so that was week 1, we were I'm not playing CMC. I'm not playing Alvin Kamara. I get that they're the best projected, but I think that I want to play the superstar stacks, and that this position, even in the best projected players, is so fragile that when they're close, I think we can really take advantage of that. And so it was good. I feel like I've known that, even me talking about it, I've known it inherently, and it's been in my team somewhat, but not always either. I haven't always applied it, I think, as best I can. So that was just kind of, it's good to just pull this stuff up and look at it and talk about it and stuff, because it was just a nice refresher, even though, like I said, I feel like I knew that. Talking about it and seeing it, literally seeing it, looking at all these, there was actually some high running back scores this week. Not high ceiling wise, but guys that scored more than 20 points. There's a lot, actually. It's just that nobody played any of them.
Right. Well, that was the problem with my lineup. Sometimes I would have great everywhere else, and then I have Mike Davis, 11 points. It's you needed 40. You needed at least 40 points out of your running back slots in total to have a chance or whatever. At something worthwhile. But just I didn't have the right combinations. it wasn't a bad week. It was a survive and advance week for me. Yep. You made some money, cashed or whatever. But we'll this will be a theme throughout the entire season. I'm sure we'll, after next Sunday slate, we'll be talking about, can you believe X, Y, and Z, and fragile projection that, and this guy got injured what, and I think in general, people, if we take the major sports in DFS, people know that MLB is a high variance sport. people know that NBA is a low variance sport, even though it still is a high variance sport, but it's the lowest out of the bunch. I think people treat NFL like it's closer to NBA when it's probably more closer to MLB.
Totally agree. Couldn't agree more. I mean, that's got to be, that's it. Like, that's the, like, full stop. That probably, people don't treat NFL as...
Treat Christian McCaffrey like you're rostering Mike Trout for a 3-game series. So it's maybe not one game because it's not just 0 for 4, but just like the Angels are playing the Red Sox in Fenway. Do you want Mike Trout at 6,000 or whatever? Juan Soto, any of the high priced hitters for three games. So you get like 12 to 14 at bats. And do you think he's going to outscore, it's the middle of the road, Gene Segura, like some just like middle of the road hitter, whatever type of thing, like most likely not worth the 4K. If you think more like that, rather than the NBA, where it's like, oh, Alexander Madison is 6,000 on DraftKings. That's like when Giannis and Middleton are out, and I'm going to play Drew Holiday at 5,800, knowing that he's going to have like 38% usage. It's like, no, it's not. Nothing in NFL is like that. Like nothing. Exactly. Even if Christian McCaffrey was minimum price 4,000 at running back, it wouldn't be that situation in basketball where you literally have the guy in 100% of your lineups.
Yeah, it is that sweet spot between a volume and an event-based game, right? Baseball is event-based. Hits, home runs, right? Strikeouts, whatever. And then basketball is basically just a stat accumulation game. You can accumulate stats, right? That's what Najee did. That's what Najee did this week, right? He just accumulated stats through catching a bunch of checkdowns. But it's still event based in that you need touchdowns and you need big plays and all of that. Like Najee, I would argue that like getting 19 targets as a running back and like however many carries he had and only scoring 30 fantasy points is like really, really bad. But like, you get enough volume to where, okay, it offsets that. But people don't think about it as event based, even though we know how important touchdowns are, right? Everybody knows how important touchdowns are, but they don't think about how much touchdowns, are, the end that can, especially in tournaments, to winning a tournament, one play, right? I mean, DeAndre Swift went out at the 1. Who are there people that were close to the top with, 4% owned DeAndre Swift or 5%, whatever his ownership was, and he flips over and I think he kind of scored. Same thing, Justin Jefferson, I think he scored week 1, but nobody remembers that. They're like, oh, just look at how many targets he had and blah, blah, blah.
With my lineups, Mike Davis doesn't get in at the 1.
Yep.
The Bucks have the ball at the 1 and choose to have Brady sneak instead of Fournette getting the ball at the 1. Like, that's a 12-point swing in a lot of my lineups. I mean, like, that's the difference between Mike Davis putting up 20 points and Lenny putting up 15 points rather than putting up, 11 and 6. And people are like, I can't believe you played those guys. It's like, dude, like Jonathan Taylor could have had, Nyheim Hines, cucked him at the goal line. Yep. Like these running backs are so privy to this touchdown variance that I don't think you could make the case simply on like result-wise touchdown. Like even the last week, Chris Carson was lucky to get what he scored.
Yep.
He got 2 touchdowns, but only touched the ball like 11 times.
Yep.
Like, to me, that's running good. So, but people look at the result. And then Jonathan Taylor was running bad because he got the same opportunity, but didn't get in the end zone. But you can't, but like we said before, to wrap it all up, you can't pick and choose who you say that about and then use someone's unsustainable touchdown rate as a reason why you play them. But even so, you should play Adam Thielen every week because he's just going to score.
It's never gonna stop. It is absolutely never gonna stop. And also, Hollywood Brown can't catch. Those are the 2 things that I know. I feel deep down in my soul is that Adam Thielen's gonna score a touchdown every week, and I'm never gonna forgive Hollywood Brown.
Okay, at Erik Beimfohr on Twitter, also SpikeWeek.com. If you want to get into some NBA best ball, I don't even know who's on what team yet. I won't know that till I think October 17th, the day before like the 2-game opening slate. But you can find him there, and I'm at Blender HD. And as always, the Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports, the 15-hour audio DFS masterclass at theoryofdfs.com.